What is the one thing you wished you have learned when you were in school? How are you doing today? Maybe I try this approach by being a little more comfy. How does that feel? Maybe if you do this, maybe it's better. It definitely feels better. What was the thing you wished you learned from your school but you didn't? I don't think it was to learn as many mathematical theorems as possible. It naturally would have been something that you can actually use in your real life, and it would bring you a great deal of benefits or a reward. And when looking back, I wish that there were this one little thing that they were teaching us, not the actual teachers, but the other people from the visiting people from police department or from the hospital management. They came to us and they gave us mini lectures about the consequences, the dangerous consequences of drug addictions and alcoholism and driving while you're drinking. What are the consequences of that? And they showed us those horrible pictures of the car accidents and the pictures of mark shots of different horrible, disgusting-looking drug addicts. Right? They all looked like they were going to die in any moment. But this is how they looked, and this is how they lived their everyday lives. With their rotting skin and teeth. Their eyes were just yellow and black, and they just looked very, very horrible. And what is the use of that mini lecture is that they scared us straight. They scared us off from doing drugs or going or drinking too much, right? And I say it worked for me. I haven't done any drugs. I don't drink. But what they should have told and what I desperately needed at that time at the most was something that has to do with our everyday actions and behaviors, our everyday little sets of actions that we call habits. And just having bad habits in your life can be just equally destructive as, going into a full-blown drug addiction. And if I were told that your habits will determine your life, the quality of your life, and how well you do in life, and how to erase any kind of bad habits, how to actually recognize your behaviors and see what you are, and see what kind of vices you might get into, and see how you react to different things, and how to avoid any kind of negative, unserving, bad habits, right? But I wasn't told, and I think neither were you. It's just that at that time, maybe 14 years ago, the things that we are burdened with now, the things that we are fighting with now, just like the addiction of the internet, the addiction of porn and spanking your monkey, or the addiction of watching too many movies on Netflix. These are the things that wasn't too bad 14 years ago, but today it's just a part of our everyday lives, and people are getting messed up with this. People are being consumed with their little vices, their little coping habits to escape from boredom or to escape from negativity, and it's messing up their progress. It's messing up their growth in life, and it's doesn't do anything but to let's say you had this thing that you need to solve, this problem that you need to address, but you can just escape from it. You can deny any kind of bad circumstance you have by escaping into a world of instant pleasure and instant novel entertainment. That's what porn and video gaming essentially is. And what I want this video to be is like a mini lesson for you guys, for you, to actually not just to stay away from drugs and alcohol, but to stay away from bad, negative, life-destructing habits that will consume you if you do them for a long time. I want you to advance further and faster than I did when I was in your age, so that you can become a better person when you're older, and you have made a significant process because you have made great choices. And you feel proud and you feel accomplished. You feel more accomplished, you feel more successful. Because from now on, you know how to erase bad habits and to avoid any kind of low-value stimulating medium, right? That just gets you addicted to it. And when you're addicted to it, it's the same as drug addiction. You will not move forward. You are the guy who has stayed in the same place for 5 to 10 years, and the others around you have advanced much more further, and you are now feeling ashamed in your old age. This is the fate that I do not want for you guys. It's about managing your everyday habits and choosing better routines for yourself, and choosing better ways to address your feelings, to solve your issues, and choosing better habits to replace the bad ones. It's to truly know about the hidden meaning behind your emotional needs or your inner cravings. It's like why do you actually crave for that smoking break? Why do you actually crave to hop into the video game world and spend like 5 to 6 hours in this? Why do you crave to watch porn and spank your monkey? Why do you want the pleasure? It's actually pretty easy. You just want to... Your brain deemed the deed, the behavior, the action, the habit of watching porn so worthy and so useful that it saved it for our future use. And while doing this repeatedly, this set of actions become automated. And all of a sudden, this thing that you once discovered are now completely an automated thing. You don't even need to think about that. You just saw the trigger. The trigger may be just feeling the craving, or just feeling bored or feeling anxious. And that tells your brain that, oh, dude, if we do this thing, if we choose this habit, that brings us the reward of pleasure, and we do not feel so crappy anymore. So I'm going to give you this habit, and this is what you're going to do. So, and now you are playing a video game, and now you're just typing in your favorite porn site and going off with it. So your schools did not tell you about how do the habits form and how do they come to your life. So I taken up the job of doing this myself. First of all, why do we have... I'm going to just move this a little bit back. First of all, why do we have habits? What are habits? Habits are like a set of tools in your backpack, which you use in any given circumstance. Do you go through it without with the minimal effort to the brain, with the miniature energy expenditure to the brain. So let's say you will learn how to ride a bike, right? At first, your brain activity at the moment of learning to ride a bike is on its peak. You learn how to stay on balance. You learn how to turn the wheel. You learn how to push the pedals, and you learn how to take turns, right? And it's all about doing the action repeatedly until it becomes a memory. And you save this memory as a habit so that you will not forget how to ride a bike. You just, once you have learned to ride a bike, you will never forget it. Riding a bike is a pleasant thing. It's a joyful thing. It's also useful for you. You can move to one point to another much more faster. So it saves this set of actions into future use, and it will save it as a habit. And every time you step on a bike, you are now triggered inside of your brain to let the habit of riding a bike take over and go on continuing with your task of riding a bike without having to figure out how to ride a bike again. So that's what habits are. They help our brains to conserve energy while doing many different cognitive tasks. So any routine, any action, any kind of behavior that is useful or what just gives us pleasure, if we do this more often and more repeatedly, our brain just automates because it wants to be energy efficient and to move on to other tasks, to think about other things, or to, invent other things, invent source or agriculture or space programs. That's what habits are. They are sets of actions that are automated so our brains doesn't have to spend excessive energy on how to do them. But I could also learn that doing drugs is significantly useful since it brought you pleasure, right? And if you feel happy, joyful, it's a kind of useful for you, isn't it? But we do not see at the moment we do not see the negative long-term consequences of it. So when the familiar trigger happens, the basic ganglia in your brain takes over and gives you a proper habit to follow, and now you do the routine, the task, without much thinking of it. And you get your reward, you get your outcome of doing this task. The most obvious habits are like walking, learning how to drive a car, grabbing a bag of chips from the store, going out to drinking in Friday nights, taking smoking breaks on the noon, snacking on sweets, binge watching on Netflix. So our brains are constantly seeking for a minimum energy expenditure to go through lives, and it does it by saving and automating as many repeated actions as possible. But our high alertness, our high brain activity will not be turned off into an energy-saving mode when we are in a dangerous situation, right? Like when you're walking and not noticing a lion behind a bush, and at the same time still being switched on into this energy-saving mode of just casual, normal, peaceful walking, right? It doesn't do that. Our basic ganglia have a system whether or not to let the habit to take over or not. Our habits goes into motion once a certain trigger or a cue has happened. Our brain activity is very high at the beginning of a trigger. and it decides and figures out whether or not to give the control over to an automated habit or not, including in uncertain situations. So the trigger tells our brains to switch on to automatic habit and into an energy saving mode, thus choosing the automated habit and doing it without thinking of it, without spending much brain activity on it. And this trigger is followed by a routine, which can be emotional, physical, or mental. And then it ends with a pleasant reward that tells the brain whether or not to say this set of action into a future use. So the bullet points being, our brains seek energy-efficient ways to do cognitive tasks and handle increasing burdens in life. The basal ganglia determines whether or not a habit should take over based on triggers and cues. The habit loop consists of a trigger, a routine, and a reward. And the more pleasant and useful the set of action is, it saves the habit for a future use. So the most common habits you will learn and take or just get attached to is, tasting out that new ice cream, feeling the pump from a workout, winning the competition with a new tactic, kissing a girl, playing a new cool video game, having a fun-filled party, reading a really great book, maybe mountain climbing, or smoking in school to hang out with the cool guys, drinking your first coffee. So in time is passing, the trigger and the reward fuses together, creating this mix of expectancy and a craving for a reward that is followed by the routine. So the most important thing and truth about habits is that once they are automated, our brains, they do not do much thinking anymore, and our brain activity is just its minimum to conserve energy, right? So when the habit forms, our brains will not participate with much brain activity anymore in the decision making and to reason or question the usefulness of the habit. The brain stops the serious mental work and guides its attention to elsewhere. And that explains why habits are so hard to abandon. We stop questioning its long-term usefulness, and we just think about other stuff. But the habits fully never disappear. They are ingrained in our brains, and all it needs is just a couple of triggers and to start doing the same routine again, and the habit is full on, and you're in full automated mode again. So you will never really forget how to ride a bike or how to drive a car, even if you stayed away from it for a very long time. Imagine how terrible it would be if you had to relearn how to drive a car every time you went for a vacation and you come back and, oh, whoops, I don't know how to drive a car. I have to relearn how to drive a car. And in our habits, there comes the biggest problems with them. Our brains, they do not differentiate between good habits from bad habits. They just see every habit as a useful activity since it brought you some kind of a reward. The reward being as feeling good for a moment, having a break from your everyday tasks, or just not feeling constantly bored. It just says the habit since it's useful, and it holds on to it, even if the source of the reward is from doing drugs and the feeling of high and the feeling of pleasure from doing that, or doing high risk gambling. And you, at the moment when you got into this habit, you may have not known the full consequences and negative results that may come to you if you do this habit for a long time. Or you were just too young to realize the real potential dangers of that habit that you have. And the more we do the repeated habit for a high stimulating reward, a habit can become so strong that it acts like an addiction. It becomes like an addiction. That the brain desires that the reward so much, and it develops a huge cravings for it. And that forces our brains to more often switch into this automatic mode of giving the power over to this habit and getting that high stimulating reward as in pleasure, with no regard to any kind of negative consequences that might happen in terms like loss of your reputation, loss of your social status, the loss losing your job or losing your family. Over the course of your life, you will experience many different situations and you will do many different things. And without a doubt, many of those things that you do becomes your habit because you just feel like, because you like them and you want to do them more often. It becomes like a part of you, just a thing that you do. It becomes your everyday habit. And if you're not careful, it becomes your addiction. A habit becomes an addiction when it starts to solve too many different things and too many different problems that you might have. It's too effective on the solution that it provides to you, even if the solution is just very short term, as a temporary way to distract yourself from the problem or to not the feeling negative feelings, but to feel awesome and to feel joy and to feel pleasure, right? Because nobody wants to feel bad feelings, right? And we rather feel the good feeling, even if it's a little bit bad for us in the long term. But remember, we do not think about our habits when the habit is being carried out. We can use habits to cope with the different emotional problems or to escape from them. We can use the habits to fulfill the need for relaxation. We can use different habits to replace the lack of connection and the lack of intimacy. Since those habits provide such an easy and fast way to high stimulating pleasure, a person become more inclined to doing only those habits and abandon the actual work and the actual process of getting those things met in real life, getting those relationships, getting those problems fixed, getting those emotional issues fixed in real life, and only rely on the habit that you got into. But that's the dangerous path to depression, loneliness, losing your friends, and just losing your soul, losing yourself into this, losing yourself into the spiral of addiction. So it's not only to stay away from drugs and drinking, but to stay away from porn and video games and from the habits that are unserving to you. You see, now, if I had known this about the time when I was 12 or 13 years old, I would have never got into this habit of watching porn and getting off to it. I would have never let it become an addiction. So there are like countless of vices or habits or bad habits that we do, but we do not realize the dangers of it. We do not realize the life destruct. We don't realize how damaging they can be to our lives and how they can mess up our lives if we let them become addictions, because we simply do not think about them. When we are being in this automated energy saving mode, we do not think about them at all. And that's why this one bad habit can stick with you for decades. So I want you to think about the things that you're doing every day. Those little behaviors, those little routines that you do, what are the habits that you're doing in your everyday life? And is there something behind this? Is there any kind of discomfort or negative feeling behind it? And is that habit or this set of routine as a way to medicate or to soothe that pain that you're having? It doesn't even have to be pain. It can be just feeling bored all the time and you have nothing else to do. And you got into a habit of playing too much video games and watching too much porn, right? Are you escaping from something? Do you have emotional issues that needs to be figured out and actually solved? You could even write those pains on a piece of paper, and that's already a significant process of dealing with your emotions and to eventually solve them. You write your pains on a piece of paper, and then you brainstorm the best ways to tackle them and to solve them in a healthy way that actually solves the issue, not to bury it and not to run away from it behind pleasure, behind distraction, behind neglecting the feeling, right? Into whatever habit that you have got into. For example, loneliness. What would be the best thing to do? Go on and take a new dancing class. That's what I did. I joined up with the beginner's course of bachata dancing. Bachata is from maybe South America or something, and you will meet a lot of people in there, and it's great. I meet a lot of people in there, and I'm not so lonely anymore. What about your body image? Maybe you feel bad about your body and you don't want to feel that bad all the time, and you escape from those feelings, right? Start doing mini workouts in your home. Right after you wake up, do push-ups or just find whatever home workout routine you can find and start doing that. And eventually just join up the gym and start doing workouts. What if you have a stressful life? Meditate and journal. Meditate every morning for at least 10 minutes. Focus on your breath and let whatever feelings you have be present with them and let them come out. And eventually they will go away and they will not feel so big anymore since you actually have addressed them. And now you start to think about, and you naturally start to think about solutions, how to deal with them. And journaling. Write down your bad feelings, and it's the same as meditating. You're getting your bad feelings out of yourself and you into this other thing. You write them on a paper and you notice that and you feel so much lighter, as if you don't have that much of a burden inside of you anymore. If you have such a boring life, what else could you do? You'll find a new hobby and start reading books. Take on some online classes about the thing that you're interested on. And just please, just hear my words right now and look into my eyes. don't stick with a habit and let it become an addiction because you haven't found meaningful and healthy ways to tackle your problems, and you let this habit to become an addiction because it solves your issues and your worries in short term. Please don't let your habits become your addiction. That addiction can destroy your life. Trust me on this. Question your habits and examine them while you're not engaging with them. And start outrooting them by replacing bad habits with better ones. Remember, you can't erase a habit without replacing it with something better. You can't just take out this one bad habit and have nothing else going on. You have this sort of vacuum, this empty space, and you don't know what to do with it. If you don't find anything else to replace that bad habit, you will just drift back into your old habits. But to replace a bad habit, you first have to know the negative consequences of it. So what about video games? Well, it's all about the short-term pleasure, and you certainly will not see the long-term negative effects that it might have. But video games just give you a false sense of success. You're not really doing anything with your life. You are just advancing your virtual video game character in that game, and you're not doing anything with your own life. You just sat on the computer for 5 hours and played a video game while nothing else has happened in your life. You didn't meet up with your friends, you didn't work out, you didn't read 10 pages from this book, you didn't go on a date with that girl you have been wanting to. You just spent time on a computer game, and you have missed out opportunities in life. The opportunities to grow, experience something great, and have strong social circles. And you're just chasing the dopamine from achievements. And imagine doing that for 15 years. What will happen? What will not happen with your life? And what about porn and spanking the monkey? Well, the worst one is obviously erectile dysfunctions. You just don't get excited to your own partner anymore, and you only get excited to that degenerate thing that you're watching now because you have, over the years, you have escalated too much to many types of fetish and degenerate porn that real life girl doesn't interest you at all, and you can't get excited to her anymore. You're deceiving your true self in a form of fake virtual intimacy. You're not actually bonding with any kind of a person. All of this is by some pictures on a video screen and with a person who doesn't give a crap about you. You will escalate to degenerate and fetish porn. You will find yourself watching things you didn't even know existed, and you can only get off to that. The increasing shame and the need to hide it from the others. Loss of pride, loss of motivation to pursue real-life achievements because you do not care about your life. You only care about watching porn and getting off. Objectification of women and increased aggression towards them. You will have unsatisfying relationships and perverted, twisted views of intimacy. You will be more depressed from the inability to enjoy smaller things in life, since you only care about porn, because it desensitizes you from everything else. Your personality shifts into this dull, blunt, emotionless shell, empty shell of your former self, since your mind is just so clouded and you can't think straight. And you can only think about getting pleasure as soon as possible. So knowing the real damages, the real consequences, will give you some form of motivation to actually start eradicating that habit from your life and to replace that habit to a better one. Bro, I don't know. Bro, I just think about that. That knowledge that I just shared with you, I remember the power that comes from this, the power of knowing how the habit cycle works and how to erase a bad habit. It's just the amount of pain and damages and the wasted time that came with it. When I was an addict of 14 years. If I would have known at the time, my life would have been so much different and so much better over the next 10 years. Imagine yourself spending 14 years of doing the same thing over and over again to get this little bit of pleasure that you got before, and you were so happy about that, and now it becomes increasingly difficult to get the same pleasure, and you have to find new ways to get the same feeling. You will search for different types of genres. You will escalate to degenerate things that's out there, and you find yourself getting after the things that you are disgusted by it when you are snapped out of the habit and you just watch yourself, what you have done, what you have just watched, and you feel the shame and despair and anxiety all coming back to you, and you have deceived yourself again. You haven't done anything to solve your real emotion problems. You haven't done anything to advance your life and your career. You have just wasted your sexual energy. You have wasted your time over on pictures on a fucking screen, right? You haven't done anything meaningful with your life but to chase the short-term pleasure, because you do not think about that while you're being carried off with the habit. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. I want you to take a piece of paper right now. I want you to take a piece of paper right now. Write down every habit, write down every routine that you're doing from the moment you wake up and to the moment when you get bed. In the times of your school and in times of the weekends. What are your little vices? What are your little habits that you are doing to feel better about yourself, to not feel bad about the circumstances you are having, and to feel the state of bliss from playing video games or whacking off? What are the things you're escaping from? What are the things that you are negating? What are the things that you are trying to medicate with that unserving habit? Maybe you scroll on social media too much. Maybe you're eating too much junk food. And once you have written down those habits that you have, just think about them. Think about its real usefulness. does it actually solve anything, or does it make you forget the bad situation that you are in currently, or does it make you forget the bad feelings that you are having? I'm sure that you know that when you have carried up with the habit again, those feelings, those bad feelings, those negative feelings will come back. You know they will come. You know that. They're not going anywhere. Those problems are just getting bigger and bigger, and bigger and bigger by the amount of time you spent avoiding them. And they will come back eventually, and they will bite you in the ass the hardest you have ever been bitten. Hopefully you found some bad habits and the negative consequences that they have. Now, brainstorm healthy ways to deal with those problems. Ask for your parents for advice. Ask for your parents for help if you need to. I encourage you. Ask them about how to deal with this issue. Ask them to give you advice on choosing the most healthy and better serving habit to replace it. Now, start doing the work on replacing the habit with the better one you and your parents have helped you to choose. We need to stay sharp in the modern world. We need to stay sharp and aware from the dangers of modern world, because once you kick out the habit, replace with a better one, there can still be tons of other habits that are damaging for you. So you need to be aware and sharp and see for yourself, oh, this is the one habit that is actually unserving for me. It's not that useful for me. I recognize the same pattern. It just gives me this pleasure, and it allows me to escape from my problems. And it's not just useful for me. I don't want my problems to grow bigger. I want to be sharp and aware to see the hidden dangers of the modern world. Stay sharp and stay aware.